For many professionals, sport is ambition, fame, championships, and a special way of life, but for 31-year-old Peter Colt, it has become something cruel. Being a champion is a distant, unattainable dream for him, and a fear of what would happen if his poor career continues like this looms over his head at every serve. He's currently on the 119th racket, and day by day, he is losing a piece of his faith, his strength, and his velocity. As he walks around the women's tennis club in the opening scene, we hear that he was quite a dangerous player once, the 11th racket in the world. But no one seems to remember. Now, his career is failing miserably. From a person named Ian, he receives an invitation to become a tennis director for this club. And as if he is saying goodbye to his career as a player, he says yes. Some things make a champion. Peter has heard that it is an immeasurable hunger, or a supportive family. But when he gets home, we see he doesn't have any of those. He has a brother, Carl, who's addicted to adult films, and parents who are constantly at each other's throats. Her mother scolds him softly for planning to retire from the big sport. Babysitting old ladies who want to play tennis at their leisure was never what his parents wanted. She has no idea there is almost no point in trying to continue struggling for Peter. He is old and tired of everything, including losing all the time. Every day, a piece of ambition is taken from him. But this isn't what his family cares about, as it seems. We see a piece of real emotion on Peter's mother's face when Carl mentions that there will be no Wimbledon tickets for them this year. Peter has to simply escape the turmoil. He finds his father sweeping the floor of a treehouse, saying that he's planning to do something that he should have done long ago, move there. This is the point when Peter gives up and prepares to go to Wimbledon. But his father stops him and gives him something to think about on the way. He once told Peter that tennis was a men's sport. But now he realizes that everything he ever told his son is total rubbish, a great thing to hear from your father. And so, with this, Peter departs. At a hotel's front desk, he is told that there is a nice suite on the top floor with a majestic view ready for him, and he is given a key, even though he knows that he didn't order a nice room like that. Nonetheless, he doesn't think much of it and approaches room 1221. It is a lovely, expensive-looking place. When he walks in, he hears a noise coming from the shower. The door is open, and Peter sees a girl standing behind a glass curtain. Peter smiles miserably, immediately understanding that the hotel made a mistake. The girl smiles back and tells him that it is room 1221. He still manages to make her laugh twice before he leaves the room. He is a little disappointed once he's out of the room, but a smile lingers on the girl's face. Later that day, in this modest room, he sees that girl on the TV. Her name is Lizzie Bradbury. It seems like she is a successful tennis player from America. At the peak of her career, she has come to win Wimbledon, and this is the only thing she cares about right now. As for Peter, this tournament will be the last for him. He goes out to work on his service. He starts poorly as always, but then suddenly, Lizzie appears on the court. This time, they introduce themselves and start practicing together. Her serve seems to be much more accurate than Peter's, but the latter does much better when she is present. Then he offers her a wager. If she hits a bottle with a slice of bread, then he'll buy her fish and chips. Naturally, she hits it, but before they can continue, Lizzie's father Dennis calls her and urges her to go to her hotel room as fast as possible. Later, Lizzie plays her first ever match at Wimbledon. She has a wild temper, and it is obvious that she's using it to her advantage. Meanwhile, Peter is fighting with his friend, Dieter. They are talking about his first opponent, Ajay Bhatt. It seems like he is sitting nearby. Peter is terribly disappointed when he sees a very young man, almost a kid, sitting at a table. His carelessness makes Peter angry. Dieter says that he has played that kid once and lost. Just before the game starts, we see Carl betting on Bhatt, and understand better what Peter meant when saying that he has no supporting family. Coming into the court, Peter is like a cow getting ready to become meat. He has no hope of winning, but suddenly, a ball boy wishes him luck, and it changes almost everything. He starts out great. His mood is fiery. The mother finds out about his first win of the tournament through the radio, speaking from the treehouse. The father is over the moon with happiness, but she doesn't seem to care at all. At a post-game press conference, the journalists seem to be quite interested in him. Peter talks about Bhatt for a while, and then begins announcing his retirement. This may well be the very last Wimbledon for him, so he is awaiting a nice moment. But suddenly, a young, promising player, Jake Hammond, walks by the room, and Peter's words are covered up by the rising noise. No one seems to care whether he stays or leaves. Back in the hotel, he listens to voicemails and hears Lizzie's voice, reminding him of the fish and chips. She invites him to come up to her room at 7. Reacting levelly, Peter starts preparing. He doesn't have much time. He really gets fish and chips, but Lizzie doesn't seem to be hungry at all. Slowly, she approaches a champagne bottle and asks him what he thinks of the notion that a little fooling around before a match can be beneficial for an athlete. Peter is surprised. He admits that he hasn't done the necessary research to say for sure, but he's definitely willing to try. In the next scene, it is already night, and they are looking out for a wonderful view. Lizzie asks Peter something. This relationship that they started today must stay between them. Nobody must find out, especially her father. Furthermore, this relationship should stay as it is, relaxed, and free from responsibilities. Peter doesn't need to be told that. It is absolutely fine with him. The next day, he goes against a much stronger opponent who's in the top 10. Peter plays miserably against him, scolding himself for fooling around yesterday before such an important match. Countless poisonous thoughts swirl inside his head. This is the way he's leaving the sport, failing to get past the second round. Lizzie appears among the spectators then. And just as Peter thinks that at least there's no one among the crowd to see him lose, she screams from the tribune. Their eyes meet. It is the opponent's serve, but for some reason, Peter's game has improved drastically. And so, for the first time in the past 2 years, Peter defeats a player from the top 10. The opponent is left with no chance. He looks up to see Lizzie, but the latter is taken away by her father Dennis. It seems like he has a great influence over her. During the press conference, Peter is informed that his next opponent will be his training partner and friend, Dater. Peter is dumbfounded. He doesn't know what to feel. In the next scene, while walking with Dater and talking about it, they agree that no matter what, they won't quit practicing together. Simultaneously, Peter is trying to get in touch with Lizzie. When he finally does so, he starts offering to repeat their last night. But then he hears a voice that makes him freeze. It seems like Dennis is on the other line of the call. And before he can think of anything to say, Dennis hangs up. Later, when Peter is trying to find Lizzie, he runs into Dennis in person. The man looks at him with stone-cold eyes and warns him to stop immediately, whatever the relationship he has with Lizzie. Peter is quiet. He nods in agreement. Once Dennis moves away, we see that he is disappointed in himself. The rain starts pelting then, and the games are postponed. Peter is standing with Dater in the next scene, looking at the rain and talking lightheartedly, when Lizzie waves at him from the window of a taxi. Without much thought, he follows her, and they end up in a cafe. Lizzie confesses, when she first saw Peter, she knew who he was. She saw him lose a close game once, and got angry at the way he let go of the win. And she hoped to run into him one day and say this to his face. And so, this is the kind of lighthearted stuff they talk about carelessly, until Peter mentions why he won his previous match. He saw her watching. They spend the entire evening together, holding hands, walking around the city, and connecting. By a fountain, Lizzie notices a comet in the sky and wishes on it. And then the subject of Peter's next match comes up. Lizzie knows what it's like to play against a friend. It's like getting ready to suffocate him, after living and practicing with him, and gaining his trust. Later that day, Carl is informed that Peter annihilated Dater. Carl is infuriated. He usually benefits from Peter's losses. Then a girl asks him if he's Peter's brother, and Carl realizes that he can also benefit from his brother's victories. In the next scene, Peter and Dater are in a sauna. It seems that the previous game didn't change anything about their friendship. But Dater knows Peter too well. Something has changed in the way he plays. And he suddenly understands that the girl from the taxi has something to do with it. At first, Peter is in denial, but eventually, he breaks down and admits it. 8 new voice messages are waiting for him in the hotel. After he hears a few congratulations, a man named Ron visits him. In the next scene, we get to know that he was Peter's agent once, but as Peter lost his ranking, Ron gradually disappeared from his life, so now, seeing him again, Peter is filled with bitterness. But Ron doesn't take it personally. He offers him a deal after a long time. He is here to help him make money. So, after some time of quarreling, Peter agrees. They arrive at a cocktail party held by Schlesinger later that night. Countless important people from the business there are excited to meet Peter. As they walk inside, Ron meets Lizzie and introduces Peter to her. And so both play out a scene as if they are seeing each other for the first time. Ron gets excited when he sees them connect so well, and Peter glances at Dennis in the distance, looking at him with contempt. Then Dennis and Ron go off together, and the couple is left alone. Jake Hammond approaches them in the next scene. He seems like an insolent, narcissistic little brat, reminding Peter of their previous match, which he won. For some reason, he seems to be swallowed by his pride. At first, Peter doesn't say much to him, waiting till he leaves. But suddenly, Jake starts insulting Lizzie, and Peter hits him in the face. It is the first time he has ever punched someone, and seeing Jake fall fires him all up. When they exit the room, chaos breaks out. In the end, they simply have to escape the cameras and the journalists. When the two hop inside Peter's car, Lizzie's father shouts to her, but they drive away. They drive until the evening of the next day. They arrive in a city where Peter lived in his childhood. While sitting down at a local cafe, they both discuss their parents' relationships and the ways life tore them apart. Lizzie's parents divorced when she was very little, and Peter's parents are still together, even though they totally shouldn't be. This is why they both despise marriage, and are conspicuously disposed to avoid ever getting married. In the next scene, they get inside the apartment that Peter still keeps in this city, and find that there is already somebody there. It's Carl with a girl. And before Peter can fully express his anger, 2 more people come in. All are Carl's friends, but they have no right to be there, so Peter throws everyone out. The peace falls suddenly, and after a few hours, we see them in bed. Peter is asleep, and Lizzie is just looking down on him. Her stare is so filled with care that their last conversation about the way they both avoid serious relationships loses its conviction. After a while, Lizzie stands up and leaves a voice message for her father. With an unusually weary tone of voice and a weirdly tired face, she assures him that she needed to do this, and that everything is fine. Peter comes in then, and they both go for a run. After a few hours, Lizzie notices something near the shoreline. When they get down there, we see that it is an abandoned tennis court, the place where Peter once learned how to play tennis. This is the very spot where he fell in love with this sport, and suddenly, the thought that he will soon be leaving it all behind fills him with unimaginable sorrow. Lizzie, meanwhile, is taking an imaginary ball and aces him continually, urging him to take up the racket and start playing. But Peter's mood doesn't let him do that. He decides to share this with her, saying that this Wimbledon will be his last, no matter what. Lizzie is surprised. Peter is playing so well. He is winning, and he must keep winning. There is clearly something in her words and in her presence that changes Peter entirely. And so, he follows her lead, takes up a racket, and shoots the imaginary ball. For a while, they play like this until Lizzie throws the ball too high into the air. Peter freezes in one place and looks up. There is a comet cutting the night sky, a symbol of their relationship. This is when they put down their rackets and embrace each other. The next morning, however, everything goes upside down. It seems like the photos that Carl and his friends took yesterday went viral. When, while having breakfast, Lizzie turns on the TV, they see Dennis getting out of a car and struggling his way through the crowd towards the building that strangely looks like the building they are in right now. Immediately, they understand what's happening. Peter tells her to hide, and reactively, they both get dressed. When Peter opens the door calmly, Dennis walks in and starts trampling around the apartment. All the while, Peter is trying to assure him that his daughter isn't there, and Lizzie manages to stay hidden. Eventually, Dennis stops searching and tells him something unexpected. The problem isn't in their fooling around. The problem is in the fact that Lizzie is falling for him. There is a dream that Lizzie has been striving towards her whole life, and now Peter is in the way. Dennis goes on and on about the things that his daughter wants. And suddenly Lizzie comes out of hiding, saying that he is right. She still wants to win Wimbledon. She even apologizes, and Dennis decides to go back to London without any more fuss. Peter frowns in surprise when he sees Lizzie following him, like a teenager who has done something wrong. He tries to stop her and urge her to make her own decision, but Lizzie tells him that Dennis is right. They should be together after the tournament. Peter feels humiliated. He goes up against another seeded player that afternoon. It is a quarterfinal match. Meanwhile, Lizzie and Dennis are stuck in traffic. Her match is at 3 o'clock, and her fear of being late already frustrates Dennis. Back on the court, Peter feels as if he's about to get crushed by the expectations of the whole nation. At first, he's playing poorly again, but suddenly, his opponent sprains his ankle. For a moment, it seems like Peter will be declared the winner, but his rival stands up. Now it is time for Peter to show a predator's instinct, and use all the anger inside to his advantage. Meanwhile, Lizzie is following the match on the radio. She is still thinking about Peter, who manages to win the game in the end. Later that afternoon, when he's watching Lizzie's game, Ron is with him. The latter knows that Lizzie isn't staying at the hotel anymore, and he also knows that she improves Peter's game drastically, so he tells him her new address. That night, Peter climbs up the building and goes into a room where Lizzie should be. But it is Dennis who wakes up. With sleepy eyes and the least sporty reflexes, he stands up and closes the windows. Peter is extremely lucky. He finds Lizzie's room quickly after that, and ends up on her floor with a loud bang. Lizzie urges him not to see her only for her father. Deep down, she knows that people fall in love, that it is the most natural thing a human can do, and that nothing can get in its way. So Peter sleeps in her bed that night, and sneaks out in the morning. Today, he has to go against Pierre Meru. He is the player who defeated him in the match that Lizzie mentioned in the cafe a few days ago. The commentators keep talking about that game, and about how sometimes only a little superstition or a little fault is enough for a player to completely lose control over the game. And so, with that, the semifinals begin. Peter and Lizzie are playing simultaneously, and Peter seems to be doing much better. He is empowering his opponent until only 2 points stand between him and the finals against Jake Hammond. He wins the first point, but the price for it is too dire. He hurt his back badly. As he struggles to get up, his father and mother are strangely united in the treehouse, looking at him through the screen and encouraging him from miles away. Finally, Peter stands, takes the ball, and prepares for the terrible pain. But giving up has completely left his character. He serves with an inhuman velocity and wins the match. The crowd explodes with celebration, and even Peter's parents are embracing each other and remembering their romantic youth. When Peter walks into the locker room, congratulations are the last thing he cares about. Immediately, he asks what happened in Lizzie's game. It seems that she lost. And defeat is the thing that she's least experienced in, so in the next scene, completely infuriated, she scolds Peter for ruining her tournament. It is all his fault. The only thing that Lizzie asked for was a few days apart, and even that seemed to be an impossible task for Peter to carry out. Maybe there were more reasons for his arrival the other night than love. Maybe he knows why he's winning. This is the kind of thing Lizzie accuses Peter of. She is ready to get back home and work on her game. A mummer's farce, this is what their so-called love was. And she needs no mummer's farce in her life, she needs to win, and win only. Later that day, Peter is encouraged by Dieter and Ron to forget about her and clear his mind, while a doctor checks out his back. It seems like he will need to lie still until his finals and relax as much as possible. That night, Peter hears on the TV that the comet has disappeared. Suddenly, he feels the need to get out of this cramped room. He escapes the building, gets in his car, and quickly drives away. At first, he stops by Lizzie's house, but soon decides to drive home to his parents. It is already morning when he walks into the house, and he is extremely surprised when he walks in on his parents. It is the most unusual thing that he has seen in the past few years. It is like a miracle. When Peter gets up to his room, his father walks in. Finally, he is ready to tell his son how proud he is of him, and how much of an inspiration he is. He says that Peter is like glue, holding this whole family together. And so, at last, Peter has a nice moment with his father. In the next scene, all are gathered around a table. After a lovely toast, Peter takes out 3 tickets and hands them out. The mother is immediately reluctant. They are bad luck, and if Peter loses, she will never forgive herself. But Peter doesn't believe in superstitions anymore. Win or lose, tomorrow is his last match ever, and he wants his family to be there to see it. And so, with that comes finals day. People give him a delightful send-off from the hotel. With a chorus of standing ovations and good-hearted encouragement, he leaves the hotel extremely motivated and sad at the same time. There is one person who doesn't even want to hear his name, however, Lizzie. She is flying back home today and can't stand watching his face in every corner and on every TV. She tries to avoid seeing him at any cost. This is when his interview is broadcast, and it is a shame that Lizzie is away from the screens, since this is what he's saying. The real reason he reached the finals was love, and not particularly the love for the game of tennis. The story of him and Lizzie Bradbury is everywhere, and many seem to imply that she let him down. But it cannot be further from the truth. The reality is that he let her down, and he will always be truly sorry for that. Dennis is listening, and after these words, he abruptly stands up to find Lizzie. He finds her sitting next to a kid who's listening to the same exact interview on his phone. So, she hears how Peter ends his interview. Lizzie Bradbury is the reason why he's competing in the finals. Dieter is the last person who encourages Peter before he walks onto the court. He and Jake exchange some blows before they finally get out into the open and receive a deafening welcome. The experts predict that Peter is quite overmatched today. Jake Hammond has defeated much better opponents much more easily than Peter. The first 3 serves are too difficult for Peter to answer, but the last one hits the little ball boy in the face. This is the boy who's been giving Peter motivation throughout the entire Wimbledon, and he's filled with anger. For a moment, it seems like his game will suddenly improve after this incident, but it doesn't. He loses 2 sets in a row and sees no hope of winning the third, so the only thing he can do is ask God for help. Unexpectedly, rain starts pelting, and the game is postponed. Peter has no power left. Humiliated and exhausted, he makes him go into the locker room. Lizzie is standing there, waiting. This is an unexpected meeting. Peter thought she was gone, but it seems like she's here, and he has a chance to apologize to her in person for the other night, for the poor performance, and for everything. He feels as if he has to be sorry for himself. This attitude makes her angry. She loves him, and she shouldn't be the one Peter apologizes to. And if he really wants to make it up to everyone, he should go out and decide who he is, a winner or a loser. There are only 3 words that stand out in Lizzie's words for Peter. All the others are blurry. He arrives at court late. He received great advice from Lizzie. It seems like there is a way to stop Hammond's serve. And right away, once the match resumes, Peter wins the first ball easily. The camera shifts towards the audience, and the commentators notice as Lizzie walks among the crowd to find her place. Peter is a whole other player in this set. He wins it easily, but the 4th set proves to be much tougher. Nonetheless, Jake and he are even, at 5-5 in the tiebreaker, when Jake gets a point purely out of luck. And so, Hammond serves for the championship next. But Peter wins, and the match continues. Hammond double faults then. He looks frustrated and demotivated, so Peter wins this set too. Now the 5th set will decide the winner of the match. Hammond is completely broken, and in the next scene, Peter serves for the championship. His first serve is devastating. Only 3 points remain, and his head is buzzing with thoughts of the future after becoming a champion. He must stop and focus, and so, he does. He wins another, so only 2 points are left, but he loses the next serve. Now the buzzing thoughts start to sting. Peter knows about his tendency to lose big points, and to completely lose control of the most important moments. But all this is in the past, and Lizzie watches from the crowd as Peter wins another point. His next point is for the championship, and he finishes up in fashion, but the umpire calls out, even though the ball was definitely in. Peter loses his temper. He approaches the umpire and pours his anger over him. The whole crowd watches as the chalk flies up. He will not resume playing. The umpire, however, remains cold and gives him a warning for a code violation, so Peter gets back into the court. The crowd starts shouting, in unison, as Peter prepares to serve for the championship once more. Lizzie is perhaps even more infuriated than Peter when she sees the ball hitting the net. But Peter mustn't lose faith in himself now. With a deep sigh, he looks around the crowd, sees Lizzie among them, stops time, and breathes the entire moment in, until he serves at last and becomes the champion. He rushes through the raging crowd and comes to his family, before he sets out again in search of someone else. And the whole world sees him as he embraces her and kisses her firmly. This is definitely not the end of his career. This is the starting point of something great in his life.